Okay, the reason why you have not heard of this company is because MJX makes drones, toy drones. 5 to 7 years ago, they made toy drones and they still do today. Not really that popular, and they started making RC cars, and this is one of their first models. Basically, this year, they started making RC cars. And so if it's the best 1/16 scale car to date, and I predict for the next 2 to 5 years, why is it that other YouTubers aren't talking about it? The reason why is because they're not getting commissions. MJX isn't playing that game of giving these away to YouTubers and having them talk about it like Emax does with their FPV quads or WL Toys does with their cars. So this is very, very much under the radar. And so we're gonna look at all the specs of it, and we're gonna tear this down and take a look so that you can see objectively why this is the best 1/16 scale car. Oh, and by the way, I'm not gonna be one of those YouTubers who comes on here every week telling you the next best thing. This is the next best RC car, this is the next best RC car. This one literally is the best 1/16 RC car for the next 2 to 5 years. That's my prediction, and we're gonna come back in 2 to 5 years and see what that looks like. Why it's the best car, it's just above and beyond in all the features, and we're gonna go over objectively why that is. So it's not necessarily my opinion, it's just the features themselves are just the best, and by really far as 16 scales are concerned, whether they're budget or non-budget vehicles. So there are a few reasons why these 16 scale cars are being overlooked, and it has to do with the size. 16 scale, a lot of people aren't going to be looking at 16 scale and expecting quality, and they're thinking that these are just budget vehicles and they're toys and throwaways, and people who are looking to spend significant amounts of money are looking to buy larger cars because they're more impressive, and they just have this idea that they're going to be better quality. But there's a lot of great quality features, and the build quality of these cars by MJX are excellent. And so we're going to take a look at that, and we're going to look at this one first. This is the 16208. And one thing you're going to notice about these two is that this has no clips, no body clips at all. It uses this feature, which we're going to go over in a second. Most cars you're going to find in this scale are going to, or actually of many manufacturers, except for Traxxas, are going to have these clips which come on and off, and those you can lose, and you got to do it 4 times just to take the body off. But for this, they have this technology or this feature where you just pop this way, and then you lift that up, and then the whole body just comes right off. Okay, so reasons why this 16 scale is going to be, or why it is very good quality. One, we're going to go over the lights. So this light is one large panel rather than, you know, itty bitty lights that can fall off or break or get damaged or aren't that bright. You're going to have a very bright light here, and it can be turned on and off using the transmitter by pressing this button right there. Another feature of this that makes it high-end is going to be the size of the CVDs. That's this metal piece right here. Sometimes for 16 scale cars, they're going to be plastic, and even the ones that are metal are not going to be this beefy. So this is very, very, very thick for this size car. One thing you also notice is going to be the honeycomb chassis. So this is not only is it not common, it's not seen in any other 16 scale vehicle. So this honeycomb chassis creates a more structurally sound and strong chassis without adding too much thickness. And so we do see these in the ARMA cars, and then MJX decided that they're gonna use kind of the same style and create a chassis like this. Not only that, but we look on the back and we see that it's reinforced. It's a little bit thicker here, where it basically covers the drivetrain, the center drive shaft, which is underneath there. And with all brushless vehicles, we're looking for quality, and we expect oil-filled shocks, which this is. What's also unusual about this 16 scale car is a fan. Most cars of this size are not going to utilize a fan. The number one amazing thing about this car and this car is going to be this guy. It does not come with this battery, but it is advertised as operating on 3S, which is unheard of. A 16 scale car normally runs on 2S at the most, and most companies will never venture off to claim that it runs on 3S because they're worried that if you do that, the drivetrain's gonna break and you're gonna blame them, or it's not gonna be that great. But this company does say that this runs on 3S and does sell 3S batteries. I happen to get an aftermarket one, and this is made by Luminaire, and it's 1000 milliamp hours, and it happens to fit in this battery tray perfectly. We're gonna take a look at that later. But I also want to go through another feature, and these are adjustable turnbuckles, which can adjust basically the toe, how these tires angle in this direction or that direction. Another thing that's unusual about the 16 scale car is going to be a receiver. Normally the receiver here is going to be built into the ESC. Okay, a lot of the 16 scale cars are going to have a combo unit. What that means for you is that if you decide that you want to use a different transmitter than the one that comes with the car, that you would have to change out the ESC, because the thing that speaks to this is going to be this device. So if it's built into the ESC, and in order to change that, you're going to change out the whole thing. But in this case, it's a separate device. So if you get a new transmitter, all you got to do is get the little receiver that comes with the transmitter and swap it with this. And just all these plugs that are currently in here, you plug it into a new receiver, and then your transmitter will operate accordingly. Another thing we have not talked about is the secret under this body, and that is, ta-da! There is structural components under here. It's basically a skeleton that keeps this more structurally sound. So it's going to be a lot stronger. When this thing turns upside down, the fact that it has all this structure underneath it, it's less likely to break like a normal body. And not only that, but this car actually has these, not roof rails, but these kind of roof guards, so that when the car goes upside down, it's sliding or falling on it, then it protects the body. Some 16 scale cars will not have the standard nuts here and will rather have Phillips screw heads. So it's good that they have the standard size or standard nut here, and they went through the trouble of having this accented red color, which is just a small detail, but it makes for a really nice looking RC car. We've been talking about the 16208. This is the 16210. And this, again, does not have the clipless body, but it does come with a wing, and both cars here come with a wheelie bar. And these cars do wheelie on demand, not only on 3S, but on 2S. I actually tested this car in my living room and put a 2S battery in here, the stock one, and just ran it. And then it was so powerful that it flipped upside down in my living room within just a couple feet. So the torque on this and the way it's geared and just the whole powertrain is just very, very good. All right, the reason why I'm using this battery is because the battery that fits in here is proprietary. So MJX MJX, first of all, is a company that started creating toy drones back in the day, like 5-7 years ago. And so they kind of used that, or adopted that style of design by creating a battery, a proprietary battery that fits in here perfectly. And so because it fits in here perfectly, it's hard to find a battery that also fits in there perfectly. And I happen to find this battery which does fit there. So this goes in here like so. And you'll notice that there is a little fin here that prevents any battery that's larger to accommodate this space. I suppose if you wanted something physically bigger, you could grind this down or cut this off, or just not use this altogether and find some way to Velcro or sticky tape this. But I do like to have this little fin here because it keeps the battery from sliding back and forth, and it's just, I like keeping it as stock as possible. And so rather than using Velcro straps like every other RC car out there, which isn't necessarily bad, this uses this rigid plate, and then you turn this dial here, which keeps the battery in place. Now the battery is not moving anywhere, and again, it is the perfect size. But most of these 3S batteries are going to come with a XT60, which I actually prefer because my charger uses an XT60, as do a lot of FPV chargers use this connector. So I do prefer a connector like this. So in order to use this connector, I got this adapter, which is a Dean's adapter, Dean's to XT60, and I just plug that in. So, another cool thing about this car, and that shows off the quality, is going to be this Dean's connector. So this Dean's connector does have this cap on here. And not only that, but they went through the trouble of having a 90-degree section, because the way you plug this in normally is going to be the stock battery has the connector on that side, and then you kind of slide it in that way. So that's the reason for this 90-degree. But the fact that they even thought about that and they considered that, and they didn't just get any normal Dean's connector to plug in, and they went through the trouble of getting this. And this whole thing shipped to me ready to go with one battery was $127. $127, which is a steal, because the next best thing on the market right now is the Hyboxing 16889 Pro, which also has metal drivetrain and is brushless and has oil-filled shocks, but none of the other features that I've been talking about. And that car, when it first came out, was $127 and has dropped down to $90. But even at $127 for this, for that extra money, it is totally worth getting this. I can't explain how good this vehicle is. And so I did buy 2 of these because I'm just worried that the prices are going to go up by the time I'm going to want a second one. So I did buy a second one. I bought this with my own money. I'm not sponsored by any of these guys. This is just a very good car, and none of the YouTubers have been talking about this. And I think the reason why is because MJX just isn't in the game as far as marketing. So the YouTubers aren't talking about this because they're not getting any sort of commission or anything off these cars. And speaking of commission, I do not have an affiliate link down below. You can get this wherever you want, because I really wouldn't care any less if I make a couple dollars commission for you getting this or not. The whole point of this video, and for the whole YouTube channel in general, is just to make sure that you guys aren't falling into the hype for inferior products, and that you are aware of products that are good and worth buying. And this is definitely worth buying. A lot of times we're buying RC cars and we're expecting some sort of drawback or something that's not great about it, and we're expecting to upgrade it. Upgrade. That's the first question people ask when getting an RC car. And this car does not need any upgrading at all, because everything is just so spot on. The only thing, if I'm gonna nitpick, is gonna be the steering. The current transmitter, it is very sensitive. So when you're turning left and right and there's a slight delay, it's a little bit, I don't want to say hard to control, but it's going to take some time to kind of learn over other cars. So it's not going to be immediate response, but compared to all the other advantages of this car, that is nothing. And the fact that the receiver is a separate device, you can easily change to another transmitter if you wanted to. This is how it looks like when it's all plugged in. This is too fast for me to really film on my own, but I'm going to give it a try. Earlier I said the steering has a delay, but it's actually not the steering. The steering is very fast. It's a pretty quick servo. It's actually the throttle that has a kind of a dead spot. Okay, but I don't necessarily recommend this as your first RC car, but possibly your second, because it is quite powerful. And even though there's a limiter on the transmitter that drops the throttle down to 70%, even when you run that on 2S instead of 3S like I am here, it's still very powerful and a little bit tough to handle if you're not used to it. As I mentioned earlier, you can change out the receiver and therefore use your own transmitter, and some transmitters do allow you to change the dual rate down very low, meaning you can set the throttle limit as low as you want. For most people who are new to the hobby and who are just buying their first RC car aren't going to want to necessarily take it apart and start modifying it and changing the electronics right away. A lot of times new people, even like myself, just want to drive it. They don't really want to be spending their time fixing it and modifying it. So. But if you can be disciplined and run this car controllably, it is a blast. So I am driving this one-handed, and it's fairly easy because the turning wheel is so close to the thumb area. Boy, that is just crazy speed. And look at this thing. And then, whew. The light button is going to be right here. We're going to turn that on. Actually, let's bring it a little closer so you can see that. You can turn it on and off. Another cool feature that is not available on here but sold separately is a GPS system. So you can buy a transmitter with a GPS module that costs, I think, $35, and you put it in the car and it tracks it like it does for cyclists or runners. And the range is fairly good. I mean, for a 16 scale car, you're not going to drive it that far because at some point you're not going to be able to see it. So you can see how it just wheelies on demand like crazy. A lot of people will be comparing this to the Hyboxing 16889 Pro, but it's really no comparison. The features and quality of this are just hands over fist above Hyboxing. I still really do love Hyboxing, and I hate to say all these great things about a competitor, but MJX really is on the scene, and they're here to stay. It is a very good car. Okay, my neck is getting tired. And I'm gonna have some fun with this. But this is the MJX 1610, sorry, 16210, and the other one over there is the MJX 16208. I do recommend this one over the other one because it has the clipless body attachment. But this one, because of its lower profile, it's less likely to flip over. On some of those more aggressive turns, this car, the way I drove this, that car would have probably flipped over, whereas this one does not. And again, they both have wheelie bars. I'm a little out of breath because I'm trying to film while running because this thing is just that fast, it's hard to keep up with it. Normally I would say that 1/16 scale cars are not made for grass, which they are not. For grass, I would say 1/10 at minimum, but because of the sheer power and the gearing of this, it goes on grass just fine. Not only can it handle grass, but it actually it goes on grass very, very well. Very well. For other 16 scale cars, I would say that grass sometimes is manageable, but this thing actually performs on grass, which is just unheard of for 16 scale cars. And then just to kind of show you the power and I guess the strength of the diffs, we're gonna go up this curb, which is just gnarly. I mean, there's no other car that can do that that's 16 scale. If there is, show it to me because I would love to see it. If you do decide to go with this truggy style as opposed to the monster truck, do realize that you will need to trim the body to provide some clearance, because on full turn, this wheel will start hitting the body and start flapping around. I normally do not do unboxing videos, and I definitely don't go into the manual, but this car is not very well documented, so I wanted to go over this manual in particular. I'm not going to go over every page, but it's also not unusual for manuals to have exploded diagrams, but the level of detail in this particular manual is very, very good and better than any of the other manuals I've seen, even for the higher end models of cars such as Arma. And this car does come with everything you see on this side. It comes with this USB stick that charges your battery. It comes with this metal hex driver, which is for removing your wheels. Normally budget ones will come with plastic, but it's nice that this one comes with metal. I did buy a couple of these for my other cars before getting this car, and these are maybe like $3 or $4. And it does come with a screwdriver to put on the wheelie bar. And this is the battery I was talking about that is proprietary. So you can tell just by the shape of this is a little bit odd. Doesn't look like the normal lithium battery that you've seen. And so this one is only for this car. And what you'll notice about this is that it's Dean's, but the balance port is, or balance lead rather, is recessed or flush, okay? Which means that you cannot put this into the balance port of the charger, which makes it a challenge. So normally how you're supposed to use this is you plug this guy into any sort of USB adapter. You're more likely to use something that goes straight into the wall. And then this guy plugs into your balance lead, that white port. But if you're using a hobby grade charger, which I do recommend, then you're gonna need a balance extender such as this. And so this will go into the port as such. And then that way, this can plug straight into the balance port of your charger. And then you'll need a Dean's to whatever connector you have on your charger. In my case, it's an XT60, and that would plug in like this. And that's how that would look like. One thing to note about this USB stick. Normally, the USB chargers for the batteries that come with the vehicles charge at a very, very slow rate. But what's interesting about this is if we look at this in detail, you'll see that it charges the output at 1.5 amps. So this being a 1050 milliamp hour battery, 1.5 amps is 1.5 C. So that actually charges at a fairly high rate. Higher than I'd feel comfortable with actually, but you can use this, and this is not a very, very slow charger like you would normally see. So what you can expect is that this would actually charge it fairly quickly. If you do decide you want to buy this MJX 16208 or 210, you have the choice of buying it with one included 2S battery, or a kit that includes a 2S battery and a second battery that is 3S. So that one is significantly more. I mean, when I say significantly, I mean maybe like $20 more, but you can buy a 3S battery that I showed earlier in the video that is cheaper than $20. So, and this isn't something that you can use for many other cars very easily. So I would recommend that you just go the cheaper route and buy the car that comes with the 2S. And if you do decide you want to buy a 3S battery, that you buy the Luminaire one that I recommended earlier. This is most likely not your situation, but the reason why I like batteries for my tinier RC cars that have XT60 connectors is number one, that it can plug straight into my charger that uses XT60 rather than using some sort of adapter. You recall earlier, I had to plug this guy in, and there's an adapter that goes into the charger like that. Whereas for this battery, I don't need an adapter at all, it just goes straight in. Another reason is that this is the battery that I use for my goggles for FPV, and that also uses XT60. So this battery can be used for dual purpose for my personal use. That may not be the situation with you, but when you're shopping for batteries and you're just putting your collection together, you might want to think about future needs or other alternative ways that you can use the battery, rather than having one proprietary battery for one car only. So that's just something to think about.